soon. Now, hello everyone. It's good to be back. Thanks, Mike, last week for covering the Fort on Thursday and Friday.
My pleasure.
And thanks to all the people who well wishes out there. I appreciate the kind thoughts I got about my son last week. He still not positive on what's going on there. It was a really scary week last week. But we're hoping things are looking a little bit better. We're going to find out more today or tomorrow. We had some tests done and stuff like that. So, but where it was really bad Wednesday, now it's pretty good. So, for what it's worth, I really appreciate it. I got tons of well wishes. I thank you guys so much for that. But yeah, we'll get on from that. But anyway, so it's good to be doing the podcast again. It's good to be doing something again besides hanging out in hospitals. It's been crazy. But yep. So we are here, and we're waiting for Kevin. He's going to be joining us shortly. We're going to talk about Paul MacLean, of course, because you never know what happens in Ottawa. What happens in Ottawa does not stay.
What happens in Ottawa?
That should be the title of the podcast. What happens in Ottawa?
Moving to Vegas. There you go.
Never stays in Ottawa. Nope. That's for darn sure. Ottawa is this I did not see this coming. So, but maybe others did. I certainly did not. But
what's ironic, Ak, is the fact that they came back from a 3-0 deficit last night and beat Vancouver in a shootout, I believe.
Right.
And the only time I recall a coach being fired after a victory was Randy Carlisle in Anaheim when Anaheim was struggling. I think it was late 2011, and they won a game, and everybody thought, okay, they ended the losing streak, and then the next day Bob Murray fired him, and it must have been that their mind was made up; they were going to fire him no matter what.
I don't know.
And they did.
Well, here's Kevin. Yeah. So we have Kevin Allen and Tom Laidlaw in the same room at the same time.
Wow, crazy, man.
Hold on. Is Kevin calling from the Hall of Fame or the Lester Patrick room, or where's he calling from?
I'm calling from my kitchen.
Jacket. He's got his Hall of Fame jacket on. There you go.
Look at him. This is just a thrill.
How are you, Tom?
I'm doing good, Kevin. Congratulations.
Thank you. It was quite a weekend.
You knew you would get help from Tom today, Kevin. You knew that was coming.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, what do we call him now, though? It used to before it was just call him Lester Patrick. Now you add the Hall of Fame to it. It's kind of confusing, right? I mean, what title do we use? Like
the Honorable Kevin Allen.
Well, my wife likes Elmer, because I won the Elmer Ferguson Award. So.
Elmer it is, then. That's good. I like it.
Yeah.
Elmer's classy.
Just not with the last name Fudd after it. As long as.
We haven't started yet, have we?
No, we are live though.
We are live.
Yeah, I just saw that. I just want to know whether we had set our.
Not officially start. We're going to start now. So yes. So before we start live, this is Tom Laidlaw, guys. This is our guest today. Let's start live. Let's introduce and I'll introduce Tom. Okay. So here we go. 8th of
Monday, December 8th.
My mom. I'm in the funny story. I'm in the hospital with my mom. That's not funny, but we're in there, and my mom's in there, and she says to me. And she's there with my niece who listens to the show every day. Hello, Brianna, wherever you are. And they sit there and they say, all this crazy intensity is going on, and everybody's like, really, it's really. And they say, so what's the deal with you and dates? They just say to me, like, I'm like out of nowhere, like, what? What do you mean? It's like, why can't you ever get the date right on anything? And I'm like, well, it's just, there's a lot going on. The podcast, I got all these notes in front of me, and I'm trying to and the date just seems like, insignificant to me. Like, what? We're just tracking the times we go around the sun. It's just kind of pointless, but people are going to do it anyway. So yeah, so my mom gave me hell. So from now on, I got to be better at the date.
So your explanation for the fact that you've gone existential on us, that it's just so meaningless that you just can't be bothered.
It's completely meaningless. That's the only way you can deal with getting old, right? I mean, like.
The sun was in my eyes. That was, if you read the famous book, that was the.
Yeah, right. Like, where are we? Like, okay, that I just think I saw Mercury out of our left-hand window. It's probably around early December, and that's about it. That's how I look at it. So.
Oh, this is deep.
I'm getting a lot of mileage out of the fact that you missed the date by 2 years and 9 months. Which is, to me, that might be a world record.
That's pretty good.
Trying to get the date right. And
the thing is, I always remember the dates because of I almost have a master's in history. So like yesterday was December 7th. It was Pearl Harbor. Today, December 8th, is anniversary of John Lennon being killed. It's like, I mean, I just remember these things, so it helps me remember the date. But apparently that doesn't work with that.
Yeah. All right, let's do hockey.
Let's do it. Oh my goodness! All right, here we go. Yeah, someone in the chat room agrees with Tom's statement. We'll get into this. All right. Okay, so got it. Smiles. Hey, Hockey World, how you doing? It's Monday, December 8th, 2014.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com, coming to you live from all points in North America today. Just before and we're joined today by a special guest who has joined us one other time, and that would be former NHL defenseman / former player agent / former good guy, Tom Laidlaw. How are you doing, Tommy?
Excellent. I'm Tom Laidlaw. I'm part of the Kevin Allen fan club.
Just came here to.
I'm just struck by the former good guy.
I know.
Guy.
What am I now then? Am I not a good guy anymore?
No, you're still a good guy. You're looking a little more like a criminal these days, though, with your beard. But it is for a good cause, which is explained beforehand. So that's good. Let's start here today because we had a firing just before we came on the air, which was, and there's a lot of coaches who've been rumored to be getting on the outs, but this is one I did not expect to be fired. I mean, after all, I think he's doing better than any team that anybody prognosticated he'd be doing at this point. What do you make of this, Kevin? We'll start with you. John MacLean has been relieved of his duties. I always love that statement. He must be like, man, I feel so relieved. I'm so thrilled that I don't have to worry about working anymore. Go ahead.
The Paul MacLean firing, I think, was caught me by surprise as well, and just for the reasons that you mentioned. I think coming into this season, all of us had the Senators projected near the bottom of the standings, and there was no indication that this team has quit. I think when we've all watched them play, we say, well, they need a little more help. You can't lose a player of Spezza's caliber and not have some ramifications on your offense. And the only thing that causes me pause, though, is having known Brian Murray for 3 decades, the one thing that I would always say about him is that he has always his fingers on the pulse of his team. Yeah. And if he decided that he needed to make a change, just knowing him the way I do, I would suggest that he probably saw something that maybe we didn't. But I agree. I mean, I would have thought that he would have been down the list a little bit of coaches who were vulnerable.
Yeah, and I wonder if he becomes one of the coaches now who is in play, because he actually has brought players in. This is in Edmonton. Would Paul MacLean make some sense? We'll get to that in a second. But Tom, you brought up something interesting, and here I found the quote, and then I want your comment on this as being a player. How would you react to this quote? This is MacLean's quote, and this is brought up by Ryan in our chat room. He says he was asked by Chris Cuthbert on Saturday night if he'd be more worried facing a hot or cold Sidney Crosby, and he says, all I know is I'm scared to death of no matter who we're playing, MacLean said, whether it's Sidney Crosby or John Tavares or the Sedins. I go day by day, and I'm just scared to death every day of who we're playing. So, yeah. Tom, that's what do you think of this one?
Well, Kevin knows Brian Murray a lot better than I do. I just look back at the history with Brian and the coaches that have been fired. I mean, there's been a pretty lengthy list of guys just in Ottawa alone. So you kind of want. I mean, different coaches are different, right? Or different general managers are different. They keep guys for a long period of time. You look at the Nashville situation with Barry Trotz, how long he was there. Look at Kenny Holland in Detroit. How long he keeps coaches. So everything's different. You look at the LA Kings, the first cup that they won, they fired their coach partway through the year and then went on and won the cup later. So I don't know if there's a right or wrong formula, but when a coach comes out and makes comments like that, and then you see the coach getting fired pretty quickly after that, you kind of wonder, has he really lost the room? And to Kevin's point, that's certainly what it points to.
You'd think so. I mean, at this point, and I think his team's playing well. It didn't seem like he lost the room, and I mean, he wanted Jack Adams not too long ago either. He's
that's always an entree to being fired is winning the Jack Adams.
That's right.
I mean, okay, they have a -4 goal differential right now. They're behind Florida, which I don't think many people in Ottawa expected. See, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, when we had our show at the beginning of the year, I thought Ottawa was closer to being in contention for McDavid and Eichel than they were to a playoff spot. Maybe that wasn't the point of view of Brian Murray and Eugene Melnyk, because I'm a little puzzled at this firing. I mean, I think MacLean is a good coach. I think the fact that they lost leadership in that locker room with the the departure of Alfredsson last year, with the trade of Spezza. They're a very young. Kyle Turris is their number one center, and I don't think anybody in the NHL thinks Kyle Turris is a number one center. They have a lot of good young players, and maybe they think that the path for this team is to have a coach who is better at player development than Paul MacLean is. But I'm a little puzzled, and for all those people who said that Randy Carlyle was going to be fired first, I'll give you my address to send the check.
I wonder. Go ahead, Tom.
I you know what, guys? I just wonder what's going on there in Ottawa too. You look at all the stuff you mentioned, Alfredsson leaving and going and playing with Detroit. You've been there all that time in Ottawa. They'd gone to the finals before. He was a god in that town, and then to make that move, at the end of his career, obviously he's a Swedish guy, so he's talking to Nick Lidstrom and he's talking to Zetterberg, and they're telling him how great Detroit is. But he's in Ottawa, and he sees Ottawa, and he sees how the teams run for him. So for him to make that decision to leave. Now with this firing and Spezza wanting out of Ottawa, you kind of wonder what's going on there behind the scenes. I mean, like you're saying, the team isn't that bad right now. They just won a big game last night. And to fire the coach now, there's obviously something behind the scenes that's going on there. Is it dysfunctional? Is it who knows what's happening? I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I mean, and Ottawa's always had some element of this dysfunction in it. To me, I don't know what it is, but it's always had a. I've talking to players who play there. It's an incredibly small town. I mean, because the people who work there, most of the population, a lot of the population, are government workers, and so the actual Ottawans themselves go to like 2 or 3 bars, and that's about it. And the players go to these bars too, and we all remember the rumors from the past and all the crazy stuff that came up with Ottawa. It's always had the element of it's a heavy rumor town, and because of that, it's one of these towns, and it's a very paranoid franchise. Because of all the rumors, because they know all the players are going to all the bars with all the people at the same time, and everybody is nervous about what's going to happen next. And yeah, I mean, I wonder if he knew this I wonder if he knew he was getting fired when he said these comments to Cuthbert. Because part of me was thinking, okay, they got the Alfredsson thing going on, right? And you don't want to fire him and have that upstage the Alfredsson thing. So I'm wondering how much he knew this, or at what point he knew it. It just feels to me like. Or he knew something was up when he said that. Because when you look at that statement, it's not a coach's statement, to me. I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts, Kev?
Well, I think if he got fired over that statement, I mean, it sounded to me like he was, in addition to trying to make a point, was also trying to be glib. Just a way to say that. I mean, I think of right away of the comment. I think it was Harry Neal that said when he was in Vancouver, he says, we can't win at home. We can't win on the road. I haven't been able to find another place to play.
Yeah, right, yeah.
It's that kind of.
And Paul's got that personality too, yeah.
Yeah, he does. He does. He was a long-time assistant coach, and the thing that's troublesome to me about that team is, 2 years ago they were one of the best defensive teams in the league, and then they just fell off the table defensively. You just couldn't figure out, why everything was so different. And I think coming into the season, the thought was, okay, they're going to go back and play the way they did 2 seasons ago. And the other element too, I wonder if Brian Murray looked and, Anderson got off to such a great start, and maybe because of that, Murray thought this team should be a lot better, than it is now. Again, I don't know that we would all agree to that, because when you assess their roster in comparison to the teams they're trying to beat out for the playoffs, even the Florida Panthers, maybe the fans in Ottawa aren't happy, but Florida is the second best defensive team in the Eastern Conference.
Right.
And they're not so different than the way the Senators were a couple seasons ago when they really surprised everyone by playing so well defensively and were competitive. So they have been able to get back to that point, and probably, if I had to guess, that ultimately that was the final decision that Murray made. Is, hey, I kind of hoped we were going to get back to where we were, and we're not. So the team is not responding. and somebody had to pay a price. But the timing of it is so odd after the win.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, Kevin, is that Craig Anderson has almost a .930 save percentage, and he has an under .500 record.
Yeah.
And your best player in Erik Karlsson is a -10, which is amongst the worst plus minus in the league. And I know that with all the analytics stuff that statistic is some diminished in some regard. But when you're the best player and you're out there for 20 minutes, 25 minutes a night, and you're -10, your team's in trouble.
Yeah, that's for sure. And and you do wonder about Edmonton and Philly and places where things aren't going well at all. Where you think to yourself, okay, this is a team that seems to be doing better than they expected, and their coach is gone. And the Oilers fans they're sitting there saying we're going to fire another coach, or in Toronto earlier, like you said, they think they're going to fire another coach. And I just wonder. It's always interesting to me that they see the different teams' level of what they'll take. Like there's always every team has its own sort of internal. Okay, this we're willing to take. This is too much. We can't take anymore type stuff. To me, that's always fascinating. Have you found that to be true, Tom? There's different levels of different teams.
Well, different teams and different general managers too. Like I mentioned before,
yeah.
And I don't mean to be critical of anybody when I say it, but again, clearly Brian Murray has a history of firing coaches. Bringing guys in to last long and they fire them. Other guys will keep them for a long period of time. For me, as a player, I liked it when we kept the coach, even through tough times, even if it was, partly the coach's fault, because it's really easy to fire the coach, right? And then what do you do after that if the players aren't doing their job, if they're not accountable, if you don't have the right leadership? And again, Karlsson's a fantastic player, but he is, he creates a lot of offense, as they say, and he creates offense at both ends of the ice, right? He's end. And when you've got your star player being that kind of guy, it's it creates some problems. Right now, it's harder to make everybody else accountable. There's a coach to go in and say, okay, guys, I want you playing great defense. I want you blocking shots. And they're going to look at the captain and say, well, he's not doing it. Why? And it shouldn't be that way, but the reality is it does happen that way. So I just get the feeling that, again, all the things we've heard about Paul MacLean before as a coach was when he won Coach of the Year award, was this great communicator. He had the team playing great. Does he all of a sudden now forget how to coach? Yeah, I mean, he's still the same coach. You've got different personnel. It's a different style of team, different leadership group. And again, I'm purely speculating, but it kind of looks like one of those things where, like you're saying, they weren't doing that bad. They were doing better than expected. Was he butting heads with some players, and the players went and wanted to get things changed? And again, I don't know that. I'm just it smells like that to me. That's maybe one of the issues of this game.
And if you look at the way they're constructed right now, contract wise, they don't have like a boatload of unrestricted free agents to move out and change the chemistry in that way. Mark Mathot is the only guy whose contract is up at the end of the year. They have a couple young guys like Zibanejad and Alex Chason who are restricted free agents, but all the core players on that team right now are locked up for 2 or 3 years, like Bobby Ryan, who just signed the extension. So it might have been part of the solution or part of the calculation that we got all these guys locked up, and we're not going to be able to make any kind of deals to shake up the chemistry, so let's fire the coach and do it that way, which I always hate, because I think in the end it lies on the players to unless the coach is a complete incompetent, which we know Paul MacLean isn't. It's up to the players to perform on the ice, and if they don't perform on the ice, they should be the ones to reap the rewards, so to speak, if the team is not doing well.
Yeah, I agree. Now, in other news, let's get to the stars of the week, because that just came out recently too. And we had some 3-star. We have 3 pretty interesting stars this week. Our third star is Aaron Ekblad, who, at 6 points in 4 games. It's rare to see a defenseman, and Ekblad's pretty much an all-around defenseman, but as a defenseman, I just wanted, Tom, I wanted your opinion on Ekblad as to what you think of his game so far.
Well, anytime a player puts up those kinds of points, he's known more of a defensive guy, but you say, to me, it's a real bonus, right? Because now he's established himself as that guy that's an all-around good defenseman, and for him now to go out and score points like that, you're saying to yourself, well, we really got something special here, right? I mean, it's different if a just purely offensive defenseman goes out and gets those points, but he's still risking his own end. But for a guy like that to be established himself already as a good defensive player to get the points, it's a real bonus, obviously.
Yeah, he's really come on fast. I mean, he in the beginning of the year, he there were a lot of questions. Was Florida only playing him? If he was on a draft on another team, would they give him another year to sort of develop? It's hard to bring a defenseman up. That defense, it seems like it takes longer to come into the NHL and just play like this. We haven't seen a defenseman really play like this in a long time. Like, this is the first defenseman I remember coming in that just from the outset. Mike, what are your thoughts there? From the outset, has been a pretty dominant player. He wasn't they say talking to Dale Talon like that early in spring training. I want to say earlier in camp, they were concerned about him. They thought he was maybe not quite ready, but he learned very quickly apparently, Mike.
The last one I can remember that came out at the outset to do what he's doing right now is Doughty in L.A. in his first year. But Ekblad's leading the team in scoring. He's tied with Bukestad with 17 points, and I don't think anybody would have expected that. I mean, his offensive statistics in junior were reasonable, were good, but he was more expected to be one of those dominant 25-minute-a-night defensemen, two-way, good. But if he's contributing this offensively, it's just a bonus for the Panthers, who are not a very strong offensive club. Now, maybe as the season goes along, they'll start getting production out of their forwards, Huberdeau and Barkov. Barkov's not having a very good year right now, and if they're going to contend for a playoff spot, they're going to need their young forwards to contribute more offensively. But right now, Dale Talon's got to be ecstatic at what Ekblad's providing for them.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Well, and I think it says a lot about the organization, too, to bring a player in and be able to not try to change him, to say, listen, here's what we've got in these talents he's got. Let's put him in the right situations, play him with the right people, put him on the ice at the right times during the game. And that's, to me, again, you look at the successful organizations, the Detroit Red Wings, I always point to them. That's one of the great things that they've been able to do with their players in the past. And obviously Florida's done a good job with that young player.
No, they really have, and this he's a kid who there's no question about it. He's just got talent, and he seems to be able to learn really fast. That's what I've talked to people who say he's a very intelligent player. Which,
you have to be intelligent to play defense in the NHL, right?
Yeah, you'd have to be, or at least most time.
Especially New York, right, Tom?
Exactly. Yeah.
You will slip through the cracks here and there, Tom, that just have nothing upstairs, but yeah.
Then they trade them to L.A. after that when they don't.
Yeah, they get traded to L.A. Right?
Yeah.
So, the second star, Sergei Bobrovsky. This is quite the story. Went 3-0 this week, and as of course did the Columbus Blue Jackets, who were came out to a terrible start. Huge expectations on Columbus. Everybody thought they were going to be a heck of a team this year. They really got devastated by injuries, and now tomorrow against the Flyers, Dubinsky returns. So this is. Bob can get hot, and when Bob gets hot, it can be tough. He's one of these. If he's a hot goalie, he's immediately good for a couple goals a game. He's going to help you be in these games. There's no question he's going to help them battle. And when you look at it, Columbus is out of the playoff spot, but I still don't think they're too far out. And they've been a team that has the ability to make runs before, Mike. That's my thought on it.
I would say goodbye to any hope of a top 5 pick with Jenner coming back and Bobrovsky. That 52 save performance that he had last week was incredible, and they needed that. They needed their goaltender to steal a game, and now with Dubinsky coming back and Johansson has been having a pretty decent year. I think that they have an outside shot of climbing back into the playoff race in the Eastern Conference. They've dug themselves a pretty big hole, but as we saw last year, they're going to be a hard-charging team, and if they can just not have any more injuries, then they should be fine. But yes, I think there is a turnaround, and I don't think they're going to finish at the bottom of the Metropolitan Division or with a top 5 pick.
Yeah, and finally, Tom, Pavel Datsyuk. Comes back from not playing hardly at all, being hurt, and still comes up with seven points in 4 games. This guy's ageless.
Well, and what you like about it too is that all the stories you hear about him, what a leader he is, and you watch him play. It's not about me. It's all the team stuff and everything. And and the great thing about it is you see a player with that attitude get all the accolades that he's gotten, but.
Oh yeah.
There's a whole culture and a whole history that comes with that Red Wing organization, Bagman and all that. And it's just so when you see that player play like that and get that recognition and the results, it's that feel good story, right? You want guys to be playing like that, and you can see throughout the organization that's he and Zetterberg and all the other players there. They just continue on with that culture, and when you got a skill set like he does, it makes for a pretty successful player.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, he's ageless, and he's been phenomenal. The Board of Governors meeting's going on right now as well. To touch base with that, Kevin will be back shortly. He must be taking something that's way more important than talking to us right now.
Yeah. Another Hall of Fame or something like that.
Got to be a Hall of Fame calling him, or maybe he's being knighted. Maybe he's being knighted somehow.
Sir Kevin Allen.
Yes. The Duke and Duchess are in New York. Maybe he's coming out to visit them or something.
That's what's going on. Yeah. The Board of Governors meeting, and Paul, and we get it, and Bob McKenzie comes out a few hours ago and says expansion looks like it's happening sooner than later now. It's inevitable. I've always been of the mindset that this is a very transient type situation. With expansion, it feels like the NHL, if they find the right building and the right owners, will expand anywhere, or if they don't have the right, will never expand. So I mean, it's but now there's more and more talk about Vegas. I wanted your thoughts on Vegas, Tom, as a city.
Well, I first of all, I think you're right on expansion in general with the NHL. I don't think they're looking to expand at all. They know that expansion is probably going to happen because there's so many other places out there. A second Toronto team, Quebec City, Seattle, Vegas, Houston, wherever it is. But you're right. I think the league is just saying, they're sitting back saying, listen, let the kind of bids, we'll call them, come to us. And if everybody has all the pieces in place, and I think, the great thing with the league now that, maybe some franchises aren't doing as well as you'd like to, but, the problem spots are all taken care of now with Phoenix and, as far back as, bankruptcies with Pittsburgh and Buffalo and all that stuff. So it's, the league's in pretty good shape now, and they're saying, let's make sure that anybody that comes to us with an expansion opportunity has all the pieces in place. Vegas obviously is unique. The fact that the league is looking at it as seriously as they are, or at least sounds like they are, means that they've got all the pieces in place. First concern would be, well, what's your fan base going to be? Yes, there are people that live in Vegas, but it is the casinos that are buying up the tickets and giving them to their guests. So, I guess on one side it's kind of unique, right? You're saying, well, it's a little bit. The league obviously has done some great things with these franchises, so they know what they're doing. But it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. How many people are you going to have to come to the games? I guess they and the casino owners must know what they're doing. So
I would think so, but I think the NHL is. I think the expansion talk is always kind of weird because to me, expansion, if it really is happening, we don't hear about it, and it feels like the actual talks on expansion are not going to be public, and but yet we continually hear. It's almost like, to me, Mike, it feels like there's nothing else to talk about right now, like a Board of Governors meeting. Like, this is why expansion is being discussed.
Well, I mean, the thing is, Zach, and a couple reports last month said that they might announce expansion earlier, but that the teams would not be coming into existence until, say, 2017 or 2018. So, they may be getting organizational structures, all the ducks in a row, but not saying like that next year there's going to be a team in Las Vegas. The thing that's pretty strange is that over the weekend, a lot of reports came out regarding Andrew Barroway's bid to buy 51% of the Phoenix Coyotes, or Arizona Coyotes, and that he may be backing out of the deal. And if that happens, then any question of the expansion is going to be problematic. Eck, I think you have to send Tom another invite.
Send Tommy another invite. He's calling us, so at the same time we're calling him. I think any talk of expansion at this point has to be considered that.
Back now. Sorry, guys.
No worries. It's fine. So to me, there's the
thing with expansion, though, and I'm sorry I didn't hear what you guys said. I don't. The league isn't going to bring up expansion unless there really is an opportunity there.
Right.
So the fact that it's on the docket, it means there's something going on there. What that is, who knows?
And I don't know how much an expansion franchise in Vegas helps the Arizona situation. I don't think it's you're not going to have a burgeoning rivalry between Las Vegas and Phoenix. I mean, it may help in the long run, but I mean, until they're 100% sure place, this ownership situation straightened out in Arizona. I mean, and like I said, from reports over the weekend, things might be falling apart there. And if they are falling apart there, then how can the NHL justify expanding other than they're going to get $400 or $500 million for an expansion franchise?
But even if the ownership situation, that new owner coming in Barroway in Phoenix, doesn't happen, it doesn't really change the situation in Phoenix. The deal in Phoenix is the deal in Phoenix. Him coming in really doesn't change anything.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I agree completely with that. I mean, I think it does make a lot of sense from the Arizona standpoint to have Las Vegas, because it's not so much for the rivalry, but now you've sort of got the West under control. You have two in Southern California, and you'd have an Arizona team and a Las Vegas team. And for travel purposes, for conference realignment purposes. I mean, this realignment that we have now, this alignment, I should say, it's not forever, and you need teams out west to make the realignment work. And I've said all along that I thought the geography, from a geography perspective, I thought Las Vegas, was a slam dunk, just because you need another team out west, and you'd be a single pro team in Las Vegas, and that I think is attractive to the league to be first into Las Vegas. And I'm just not buying all of the concern about the Sin City aspect of it. In the modern society, a player can get in trouble in any city in the world, and if you want to gamble, you only got to turn on your computer. So I don't see that that's the big issue that some people do.
I agree, Kevin. You go way back to when there was 21 teams, and LA was the only Southern team. They're always saying that, you don't want to go to LA, the guys won't be able to concentrate. Well, it was such a great place to play. I went there. I mean, people were working extra hard because they wanted to stay there. It was a great place to play. So
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Now, I just have some levity here. I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but we're talking about going back to the Board of Governors in a second. But there was a Swedish goalie who his Swedish goalie celebration was this. This is really good stuff. So let me share this with you. This is gotta find out exactly who this is. This is sent to me.
Was he celebrating Kevin going to the Hall of Fame, or?
No. We decided that, Kevin, while you were away, you were probably being asked to be knighted. And
I was actually talking about mumps.
The mumps, yeah, we'll get into that for a second too. So this Swedish goalie here, who basically, what he does is he wins the player of the game. He brings out and he decides to ice fish as his celebration on the ice. Just hilarious. I don't get this, but it's pretty funny stuff.
That's good.
Like, yeah, it's not bad, not bad. We'll take it. But let's I know, it's just you never know what you'll be sent on the internet. This is another good one. While we talk about this, we didn't want to get into. I was going to try not to talk about Edmonton today because they've been so easy to talk about for such a long time. But they did finally win a game, and but this was did you see the Scrivens goal last night? This was crazy too. Like, this is Scrivens trying to inform his defenseman of a player alone in front, and them not paying any attention to it at all. It's like we've seen this. This is a typical thing for a goalie to do, right? Is to signal over. To say, okay, there's somebody over there. So I'm gonna pick him up. Nope. This guy is left completely all alone, and despite Scrivens screaming and yelling to get him. So yeah, this is a little bit more about the Oilers' defense than we've seen, of course. But yeah, the Oilers did win a game, and they did beat the Sharks, who have their own problems and all that. But let's talk a little bit more about the Board of Governors, because Mackenzie had mentioned that he feels expansion is coming sooner than later. What else are you hearing about this Board of Governors meeting, Kevin? What are you hearing that's going on here?
Well, I mean, first of all, expansion has been talked about at the last couple of Board of Governors meetings. That's not really that unusual. But, when there's smoke, there's fire. Like, it's not a question of if they're going to expand. They are going to expand. Right. It's a matter of. And, anybody who's paid attention to the way Gary Bettman does business knows he does things in the order in which he wants to do them, not the order in which we think he should do them.
Right.
And the reason I point that out is that, he's considering a lot of factors, like, trying to maximize the amount of revenue that the league can bring in. And, we've discussed this before, but, there are, like, it makes more sense if you wanted to put a franchise in the Toronto area, for example. And
right.
I'm not suggesting that that's what the league wants to do right now, but does it not make sense to wait until the value of that franchise could be $1 billion? Like, that's a low-hanging fruit, in my opinion.
Right.
That when it works best for you, when you need it, and
right.
I mean, what do you get now? Would you get $500, $600 million for it? Well, if you wait a little bit, you might get $1 billion to put that in there. So, But the point is I think that Bettman's trying to ascertain, what works best in terms of the finances, what works best in terms of the geography, what works best in terms of the ownership he has available. The arena is always a big thing for the NHL, and that's why Seattle, even though it makes sense from a geography standpoint, there's no arena there. So that's why they're sort of down the list a little bit. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be talked about, and I wouldn't be shocked if the owners have a greater sense over the next 2 days about when they're going to get to it. But I don't think we're going to see an expansion plan come out of these meetings.
Yeah, that seems to be, and it seems like there's not a whole. I'm just trying to find out a whole lot that is being discussed at these meetings. These meetings,
Well, I think the thing that will come out, or that has come out, that will have ramifications in the short term is what the cap will be for next year. I mean, the reports. I know that Pierre LeBrun from ESPN reported yesterday that the mark looks to be right now between $72 to $74 million. That's taking into consideration that the Canadian dollar doesn't go in the crapper between now and the end of the season. And if that's the case, then some teams that are going to have cap issues, they'll have an extra $3 to $5 million to operate with, which in some instances will help teams, but for teams like we've discussed a few times, like Chicago and Los Angeles, with contracts that they've just signed that are kicking in, like the Kane Taves deals or the Alec Martinez signing from last week, they're not going to have a lot of room, and they're going to have to make moves according to what cap room or what cap amount there is going to be.
Right, and the problem with the cap going up, and well, the cap will go up obviously, but the problem, I mean, people are freaking out about the cap not going up more, but honestly, there's a lot of teams that are thrilled about that. I mean, the floor is always the bigger issue right now with the cap, right? I mean, Tom.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, the floor is an issue for teams to just be like, a team like Carolina, for instance. It's they want to stop. I hate to say stop the bleeding. It's the wrong way to put it, but they're losing money, and it's great for those top end teams, but for really doesn't help those teams at the bottom. And the issue of the players with the cap, if it doesn't go up that much, and now they have to make changes. I think teams now are starting to adjust to that a lot better. They just realize that okay, if we have to get rid of a high end player with a big contract, we need to know that we have drafted properly and we have those young players that come in. And in some cases, it's a great thing for organizations because they'll move a player along, but then they'll bring in a young kid and he'll get an opportunity that maybe he wouldn't have gotten had things stayed as they were.
No, I agree, Kevin.
Yeah, and what? Sometimes I think what fans forget is that or even on our little show, we talk about these things and we spend 5 minutes on it and analyze it, and we have knowledge of it. But I'm sure for months, Stan Bowman sat around and thought, okay, if it's going to cost me $8 million to keep Taves and Kane, the cost will be I won't be able to re-sign Johnny Oduya, and Roosevelt is going to have to move out, and I'm going to Van Riemsdyk is going to move in and be a more prominent player, and he's done that analysis over a period of time and reached the conclusion. Like, I don't think was caught by surprise that he was going to have some trouble re-signing that. I think this was all kind of thought out. So I think it's almost. I guess it depends if your glass is half full or half empty. But I think if you're the Kings and the Blackhawks, you actually think the news that we're hearing out of the Board of Governors is actually good news. Like, if they could get an additional $5 million, I think they may be able to do more than they thought they would be able to do. Particularly from the Blackhawks. Like, the way I looked at it before is they were going to have to, if the cap had not gone up at all because of the Canadian dollar, then they probably were going to have to trade someone like Patrick Sharp and then lose Oduya, and it was going to be a struggle to find money for Brandon Saad, although they would have done that, but it was going to be more hurtful. Now you're looking at it and you say, wonder if they could keep all of their top forwards and find a way to keep Saad, and the cost would just be losing Oduya. So I think this is relatively good news. It could be a lot worse.
Well, and I think it's fantastic for the league too. You look at a team like Tampa this year that has had good success for a lot of reasons, but some of their success comes at the peril of the New York Rangers, right? So they lost Boyle and Strawman, two pretty good pieces to Tampa's lineup. and makes them a much more successful hockey team. The Rangers then bring in younger players to take their spot. A guy like Kreider gets more ice time. They're able to go out to sign the other Boyle defenseman. So it's, although it may look like it's such a terrible thing for one team, but like Kevin said, these teams are planning for that. They know that, depending on what the number is, they're going to have to lose X player or Y player, and here's plan A or plan B or plan C.
Right. And let's talk about the mumps for a second.
It's important.
The mumps. Yeah, I mean, it's if you drafted Ryan Suter in your mumps pool, you picked up some points this week. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy right now. Suter, Ballard, Scandella, Brodin, Folin, Perry, Stoner, Beauchemin, Tanner Glass, right?
These guys all have the mumps?
They all have the mumps.
Or have had the mumps.
Or have had the mumps this year. So, those infected with mumps can have fevers, headaches, muscle aches, fatigues, and loss of appetite.
You know what? I've come to a whole different conclusion. I think that there's some added benefits to drinking beer. There must be some special benefits to it.
You think that's the way to keep
back?
Yeah, I mean,
back in the 70s and 80s, back in those times. So I think there must be some special benefit to beer. Yeah.
You know what the benefit was? You guys didn't know that you were sick. You guys were always anesthetized, so you had no idea that you were sick.
See? Yeah.
About right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the mumps are, like I said, it's swelling of your salivary glands, things like that.
Well, what I would say about all this, I am doing a story we're going to run this week because I'm talking to all the parties about it. I was just on the phone with the head of the USA Hockey, the doctor, Michael Stewart, and we were just talking about it. And at least the NHL and hockey in general is prepared for this because they deal with the flu every season. And it runs through the dressing rooms. And, I mean, this is really just like a horrendous case of the flu, as long as nobody gets any serious, complications out of it. And, Tom, I'm sure you went through it even in your time when, it would hit the dressing rooms and it just would go around and, half the guys would get it. But, the good news is that, athletes in general are usually in better shape than most human beings. And because of that, it's not even worse than it would be. They're actually, their immune systems are pretty good.
Yeah, and they get that immediate care from the doctors, right? Instead of off the street, taking their time getting to a doctor. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, but I think this is just one of those things that happens. It's gotten into the system, and guys, shake hands, and they don't share water bottles the way they did, years and years ago. But it's not. Doesn't take much, to get it spread. I mean, as we all know from having seen what the flu does to teams.
Yeah, it's usually spread by if you're around an NHL player, be aware of these signs. It's usually spread by saliva or mucus from coughing, sneezing, or talking, according to one of the sources I was looking at here. Sharing drinks and utensils, which often we hear an NHL player say, "Hey, can I borrow your fork?" But this is nothing to sneeze at, obviously. We have to be careful.
Now at the Hall of Fame dinner, Kevin, did they share forks or anything like that?
There was no sharing of forks.
No. We were all
had your own utensils.
Yeah.
Oh, we did.
Yeah. No, that's for sure. But the mumps are, it's a scary thing. I mean, I could have sworn we were vaccinated for these as kids, weren't we?
Yeah, but believe it or not, the vaccinations, you sort of need a booster shot now, is what some people think. And I talked to one of the writers in New York who went and got a booster shot. And I did wonder. I went in the Rangers dressing room just this week, and just as I was about to step into the room, I'm thinking, I wonder if I should be putting on a hazmat suit or
right. Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, this is a very aggressive disease, right? And it is very easily spreadable. I mean, just from breathing the air of somebody with the mumps, you can get it. So this is not something that we, and it is amazing. I mean, it is just like the flu, like you said, in terms of the flu going through locker rooms, but it has a name. It's more evil. It sounds evil. The mumps.
Yeah, well, I think that is part of it. Is that it sounds more horrendous. Flu. We've had mild cases of the flu. Everybody knows. But you got the mumps, and you got something. So.
If the Weather Channel was running this, they'd be naming flus by now. Like this would be like flu. I have flu George. I've got the flu George.
The flu, mumps vortex.
Right. Definitely, this is the mumps vortex or something, because then we'd have a better idea of all this stuff. But
there's some joking around the league about who patient zero might be. They're all.
Oh yeah.
It's Ilya Brizgalov.
It's got to be.
Like it.
No, no, for sure. What else? What else do you have today? Anything else, Mike, on tap for today before we get out of here?
Oh, you caught me.
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw Lippy there. We didn't have Josh, so I thought I would throw. I usually throw it to Josh and then look for something myself. But I think that's all I've got to talk about today. I think we're good.
So who's the next coach that's going to get fired?
Tom?
Who's the next coach that's going to get fired?
That's a good question, right? I mean, to me, I still have to think Dallas Eakins is going to get fired. I mean, I guess that's one thing I do want to discuss.
Actually, I was going to say this.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a press conference with more build-up that had absolutely no consequence?
Thank you, Mike, for bringing this up. I'm sorry, I've been out of the loop, but this is one thing I did follow on, and this is. And I talked to people about the Edmonton Oilers press conference, which was bizarre, to call a press conference to basically say nothing, and then to say that we're getting better, and say that this is okay, and that the way we're progressing is okay. It really, I talked to a couple people I talked to who really believed firm out that this was a press conference to announce the rest of the league to stop calling and asking for ridiculous trades. That's what he said. That's what this press conference was about. It wasn't about the media. It wasn't about the local fans. It was just to tell people to stop calling them about ridiculous trades. Kevin, anything to that?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I've talked to a couple of GMs who said that basically the Oilers have said, we're not trading away our younger players. We're not trading away our core players. And they knew they were going to take this. They had to be somewhat sincere about this because they knew they were going to be harangued over this. I mean, but they were trying to send a message, and I guess they were also trying that there was a sense that the players were waiting for something to happen, and they wanted to tell the players, this is us, this is who we are, and I'm not sure I would have done it that way, but that's what they elected to do, and. Most GMs have taken them at their word that their plan right now at least is not to trade the players that everyone assumes they were looking to move.
And you're right, Kevin. The sharks are in the water, right? I mean, other GMs, they'll call and have a conversation with the Edmonton Oilers. They then may be chatting with a group of agents and say to the agent, "Hey, listen, I was talking to." Edmonton about your other client up there, and then the agent says to the player, hey, listen, the next team is talking about trading for you. Another player, he's a young guy, he hasn't gone through it before, he thinks he's getting traded, he may be happy to get out of Edmonton, he may be mad to get out of Edmonton, and now instead of concentrating on winning hockey games, these young kids are concentrating on getting traded. So, and then it kind of all feeds into it, right? So now the team's not doing well, and eventually Edmonton has to make the trades, and the GM that started the rumor gets what he wanted, right? So that's
that's how it works, though.
No, it's definitely working that way. But does anybody believe this? I mean, this is the problem. Like, I talked to some people who said, okay, they're sending out this message, but at the end of the day, they can't really. I mean, and then I said back, they can't really be serious about not moving players. They have to make changes.
But you know what, though? The problem isn't the star players. It's not the young kids. The young kids are young kids. They're what they are. They're high-end players that have always been catered to, always been the star players. They need to surround them with some character people on that team at the front. And again, they've got some incredible people like Craig McTavish, Kevin Lowe, all those guys, great careers, great people, all that. But you need to – we keep talking about that culture. Players come into the Detroit Red Wing organization, and they learn the culture. I don't see a culture there right now with the Edmonton Oilers, and that's the problem. It's not those star players.
Well, Ak, you just said it yourself. I mean, I think it's more the fact that they're not getting the offers for these players that they want. So they're basically saying, okay, we're not going to trade these guys for 3 bags of pucks, but if you're going to offer us comparable worth, what we think that they're worth, and it can affect the direction of our team going forward, then sure, we'll talk. But if they're getting offers for Jordan Eberle that doesn't give them back an impact top 6 forward, then why bother doing it? Wait till the off season. Wait till you can field a number of offers where cap room is not a restriction, and then go about changing your team right now. Plus the fact if they fail and finish badly, there is a pot at the end of the rainbow at the end of this season with Eichel or McDavid. And I'm sure right now with them, if they stay status quo, that is what they're aiming for. I'm sure Edmonton fans don't want to hear that, but that's the realistic outlook.
Maybe they do. Maybe they do at this point. I mean, at this point, they're thinking, okay.
No, they're never. If you're going to go trade one of those star players, long term, you're never going to win that trade. I mean, you look at Boston when they traded Sagan to Dallas. They knew that they were not going to win that trade. They wanted to make the trade to change. They didn't think he fit into their culture. That's one issue. But when you're going to trade one of those, again, I just don't. Maybe they are fielding offers. Maybe it's more because other people are calling, making offers. Mm-hmm. But to me, I would not be trading those young players. I would be concentrating more on getting people to surround them to make it more of a character team. And I hate to say it, but I'd be getting a better goaltender. And I know that's hard to do, but go get a goaltender that can save your bacon some nights, right? I mean, even if you're not playing well as a young team, you've got a great goaltender that will steal some games for you. Now you start to get on a roll.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I talked to a GM this week about the whole situation in Edmonton, and he said, he's talked to McTavish, and McTavish has made it clear he has no desire to trade any of these core players. Like, all of the trade rumors that have come out about the core players have come from teams who would like to get them.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Like there's no indication that that they would trade Taylor Hall or Eberle, or he said, I've asked about them, and I've just said we're not going in that direction. So. Yeah.
Right. With the exception of Dave Perron, but I guess Dave Perron is not necessarily their core.
Oh no, he's not. He was a guy that was brought in. But I think what I took out of that is McTavish has said, I've cast my lot with these guys, and this summer, maybe we'll have to look at things differently. But for now, anyway. I mean, there's. I got to believe at some point they're going to look at whether Petrie should be traded. He's going to be unrestricted, so it's not like they wouldn't entertain some trade offers. But I just think the point he was trying to make is all this talk about whether we're going to trade Yakupov or Eberle. Those are probably the two big ones. I think he wanted to make sure that everybody knew that they're not going to do that. So.
Yeah, which is odd because a source I very much do trust did tell me that Yakupov was offered up to Philly in a trade that the Flyers thought was ridiculous. But so I do, there's so. But then again, this is so many. There's so many different angles on this thing. You never know how to take it. We never know what Yakupov's really worth. You'll hear people who say he's not worth much. We all kind of agree on this podcast that he is worth something, and that we just don't know what he is in Edmonton because he's been in a situation. I think, Tom, they tried with guys like Benoit Pouliot this summer to bring in the kind of players you're talking about. Like, to me, he was the perfect kind of guy for that. The kind of guy you need. Is that the kind of player you need?
Yeah, kind of like Ferris was a good player, I thought, to bring in, a guy that's a real leader, been through a lot before, seems like a well-spoken guy. And I got to be careful the way I say this. Part of the issue is it's Edmonton, and when players have the option, those character guys that are getting multiple offers from different teams, if they got a chance to go to Chicago or Boston or whatever, some guys, not all, some guys may look at those other teams ahead of Edmonton, right? Because It's it's cold. It's not Southern California. It's not a big. It's not Toronto. So it's so that works against them. It's not like they can pick and choose which character guys they get. And so Pouliot's the kind of guy that you. But again, it'd be great to go back and turn the clock back and go get an Adam Graves, right? I mean, if you can go find a player like that, that'd be tremendous. He's not there right now, obviously, but that kind of guy would be fantastic.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, like the way I view it is, and I'll use an analogy of the America's greatest hockey generation, the guys who I'm talking about with, Modano and Roenick and that group. To me, when they learned how to win is when Chelios and Tkachuk and Guerin got there. And the difference between those players and the players that were there was, those other guys, they hoped to win. Chelios and Tkachuk and Guerin expected to win. Yeah. And the Oilers are in that stage now where they hope to win. And they need guys who come in there and expect that they should be winning, And I think it's not so much a veteran or a leadership thing. It's just guys that just expect to win. And there's a feeling that I think is almost contagious. And then guys just start to expect it,
But the thing is, if you look at what has happened. what has happened over the last couple years is that there's been a failure of management in Edmonton to build behind these young players. I mean, they've added Andrew Ference, they've added Nikita Nikitin. The defensemen that they've added to back up and Schultz really haven't been able to do the job. And I know Pouliot's been there for less than half a year, but you're talking about these secondary players that the Matt Hendrickses and the Boyd Gordons. They're not providing the secondary scoring and the structure that takes the heat off of these core players, and that's the problem. If the core players don't perform, this team doesn't win, and I think that's the core of the problem in Edmonton.
Yeah. I think it's hard to argue. I mean, that's been the issue, and then also this. I mean, with the kind of things that McTavish was saying in the press conference, though, we're very much leading towards the coaching change. Like that's what kept baffling me. He kept saying, "Well, we're still making the same mistakes." Well, that's normally where you would see when you hear a GM say we're still making the same mistakes. Then we are firing the coach. That's the next sentence after that. But in this case, that was but we're sticking with this thing. Because they are still making the same mistakes, and that's that's where the issue stands. But we'll, I'm sure, talk a little bit more about Edmonton this week at some point. But we're trying to. They've been a source of constant communication this year because they are so intriguing. I mean, having a team with that much talent, possibly getting an even more talented like Connor McDavid is just going to make this team even get more interesting. I mean, think about. I mean, you add a player like that into their lineup, there's no way this team shouldn't get good eventually, and that's what people have been saying every year about Edmonton, right? There's no way they're not going to get good.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like the New York Islanders too, right? So they get all these good guys. Now, and again, one of the things they did this year that really has helped them is bringing in Halak. Now, I wasn't totally sold on him, but so far this year, he's been great for them, right? So even if they have that off night or off period or off shift, he's there to save their bacon, and now all of a sudden those mistakes that young players or all players make.
Exactly, and I mean Halak has been huge for them, and this is what Edmonton hasn't done. I mean, they thought they were doing it with Scrivens, and Scrivens has been good at times, but that's not he's not necessarily that guy. So, but that's all the time we have for today, guys. I do appreciate you coming on, Tom. Thanks so much.
Great to be on with Kevin Allen. That was a thrill for me, I'll tell you that.
Absolutely, as it is for us every month.
You other guys too, but Kevin's special.
Yeah, I completely understand, Tom. Right. Thanks, guys. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We'll talk to you tomorrow.